Sonak Pastakia is a professor in the Purdue University College of Pharmacy Center for Health Equity and Innovation. Sonak and his wife Rocky and their family have spent much of the last 15 years based in Western Kenya, working with AMPATH. His story is titled, Learning to Care the AMPATH Way. Welcome, Daktari.
Asante. Well, I'm sure all of you are familiar with AMPATH's Leading with Care motto, that never fully captured what was at the heart of all the success of AMPATH. For me, that misses a key step, and that's learning to care. For those of you who have spent extended periods of time in Kenya, I'm guessing you know what I'm talking about without ever even thinking about it before. And for me, it's learning to care is this indescribable subconscious sense of simply responding to needs whenever you see them without any hesitation. I specifically decided to talk about this aspect because it was what was missing in my first global health experience. Like many other people in the audience, I was able to have the privilege of joining a team of healthcare providers on a global health rotation in Kenya. I was eager to learn about how I could respond to many of the harrowing pictures of AIDS that I saw on TV. As our team of 30 providers traveled to Kisumu, I realized very quickly that something was missing in this team. Day after day, we would visit one public sector facility after another and see long lines of people with visibly diagnosable AIDS coming to our clinics seeking help from us. They made the very logical decision that this team of providers, this team of Wazungu, who freely gave out antiretrovirals in the US, could hopefully do the same for them. Unfortunately, they met a team of hopeless providers who were complacent with the notion that Kenyan providers didn't deserve any better than what we decided to give them in that 30 days that we were there. And what we said was, just go to the government facility. We passed the buck and did nothing for them. So simply put, for me, the missing ingredient was this learning to care. This group of providers, including myself, never really learned how to care. And as we wrapped up our experience and had all these final discussions and the debriefings, what I was really struck by was how the majority of these providers saved most of their criticism for the decision that we made that we couldn't travel to Mombasa because of the elevated terrorism threat. And so for me, as I'm sure many of you know me, as I unloaded all the anger, guilt, and frustration I felt over this three-week trip, I basically wasn't invited to join them again. And I'm sure there's many people in the audience who know exactly what I'm talking about. They've all been subjected to Sonak rants. But for me, I don't know how to be any other way. And so the guilt and anger I felt for being a part of this is what fueled the rest of my career, that I simply couldn't let this stand. And for me, what I really wanted was to have people around me who shared the same perspective, who felt that same anger, who did not think it was acceptable to be complacent in the face of treatable illnesses. And so I also realized that until I did something about this dynamic, nothing in my career really felt worthwhile. I'm sure for those of you who know Rocky, she knew me at the time, she could see the change. Like, I was a very different person afterwards. I was even more bitter and angry than many of you know now. And so for me, if you could fast forward a couple years, I got HIV training because I wanted to learn how to treat HIV, did an MPH because I figured I needed to know how to manage public health issues. And then for me, I got my dream job as my first job and was able to join AMPATH. And if you could take a look at the picture that I'm hoping you can present on the board. When I joined AMPATH, these were the scenes that I saw when I went to Eldoret. Now, while most people walk by scenes like this every day, the more time you spend at AMPATH, the more it becomes impossible to keep walking. And I want you to all take a moment and take this picture in. At first glance, you might miss the street youth who's blurred out and is on this pile of trash. But the more that you learn to care the AMPATH way, that simple act of passivity becomes intolerable. And for Tim Mercer and other folks who helped lead the work for street youth, that was how we felt. We couldn't go to sleep at night knowing that this was the reality we were left with. And so for me, I had the privilege of working with people like Samuel Kamani, who basically gave up his permanent pensionable teaching job to dedicate his career to building a center like Tumaini, which tries to directly address problems like this. So that center that took us over a decade to build now supports children just like this, and upon graduation, we have a 90% placement rate. Now I want you to take another look at that picture. There's another part that typifies what so many of us spend our days working on and nights dreaming about. I'm glad that there's Kenyans in the room. Can you see the fence in the background? You see how it says, "Like much now, painted"? Anybody, for bonus points, do you remember what the full saying was from Crown Paints? This is a picture from Eldoret. This was taken by one of the street youth. Anybody remember the full saying? Shout it out if you know it. It doesn't look like much now. Wait till it's painted. Now, I want you to take a minute to take in the immense power of that statement within the context of this picture. For me, that's what AMPATH is about. So keeping that picture in mind, learning to care the AMPATH way also gives you the power to imagine the art of the possible, as opposed to being burdened by the weight of impossibility. These, of course, as I'm sure many of you know, are not my sayings, but instead are many of the Mamlinisms that so many of us had the privilege of being surrounded by for so many years. Raise your hand if you've heard these sayings before at some point. I'm sure these are all the folks who've been in AMPATH for long enough. Now, I'm sure many of you got to watch the Democratic National Convention, and especially in this audience, I'm sure that's probably true. One of the lines that consistently brought a smile to my face was when everybody in unison chanted, "Thank you, Joe." And so for me, and so many other in the room, I don't want to thank Joe for a specific thing that he did or any specific act of kindness. I want to thank him for teaching me how to care, because that's a lesson, that's a gift that you'll never forget and you'll never leave behind. And it's not just learning to care, it's how to fight. It's how to never give up on a dream, even when everybody tells you that you're wrong, that it's not possible, that it's too expensive, or gives you any number of excuses for inactivity. Now, for those of us who work with Joe and have seen Joe and I work, we frequently disagreed on what to do and how to go about doing it, almost every time. But the thing I'll say is I don't ever recall at any single time disagreeing with Joe on why we had to do something. And the more time I spend in America, the more that I don't take that for granted. I spent 15 years of my career working in AMPATH, and basically, I just took it for granted that all these people I work with basically knew how to do this. And so the reason is obvious. It's this AMPATH culture that's been created to teach us to care, and more importantly, do something about it without dictating how it should be done. That was always the fun part he wanted us to embrace. And if you could go to the next picture. This picture also captures for me what AMPATH is about. And it basically typifies learning to care and working together to create opportunities for those who face barriers that few of us could ever imagine. This simple picture of Joe Mamlin, Benson Karagu, and Ellen Shalehouse, who leads the Purdue activities, captures AMPATH at its best. I randomly found this in one of the houses and just grabbed it and thought it would be useful one day. So here we are. And what's so fascinating and impressive about this picture is that we weren't working together to bloat our own egos like that first trip I was on. We were working together to support the dreams of this young kid who wanted to do all the things that many of us do. And instead of following the aspirations of academic institutions to chase the next grant or do any of these things, the outcome we were looking for was his success. And fortunately, because of that chance encounter between Joe, Ellen, and Benson, I get to enjoy the fruits of their activities. Benson now leads our community screening activities in Webuye and also works with street youth at Tumaini so that they don't replicate the same issues that he's had. And part of the reason why I'm here today is that we're here to celebrate 20 years of the Purdue-Kenya partnership. And I find myself reflecting on what we are celebrating. And what I realize is that it isn't any particular accomplishment or award, but it's instead 20 years of giving a damn, 20 years of believing in and fighting for people that others have given up on, and lastly, it's 20 years of having the privilege to work with all of you. And these are all people who've been instilled with the same ideals and go to work every day fighting for something bigger than themselves. And I hope you've all taken as much enjoyment as I have in this, but also embracing the challenge of passing on these learnings to the next generation of learners who might not have the privilege to work with the Mamlins, the Jakites, the Manjis, the Karamas, who continue to make AMPATH possible all over the world. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you, and I look forward to the next 20 years of working together.